Hotep, Brother Beniti Ammon right here. Today's topic we're going to talk about is we're going to discuss the oversoul, and connecting the oversoul to what we call the universal, all the vital life force, cosmic consciousness. We're going to link that all together. We've been kind of connecting this and tying this all into the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti, and as I explained before, in dealing with the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti, you have to merge that, what we call, with the principles of Ma'at. There's a connection there. And even going into the Emerald tablets of Tahuti, which gives you the formulas, or the alchemy formulas that you have to use on your DNA and your RNA to make that self-transformation, by making yourself less dense so you can be receptive to receive this cosmic consciousness, or connect you into this mental reservoir, this oversoul. So the question is, what is the oversoul, and how does that all tie in? How does it connect? We're going to go over some information, some excerpts I've taken here from various different sources of information. It goes on to say, there is but one soul existing throughout the entire universe, and this soul is the consciousness and the divine essence of what we call God. And we'll use terms just that you can grasp. It has also been intimated that the so-called individual souls of human beings are not separate and independent souls, but unseparated segments of the universal soul, never losing their association or contact with this consciousness of God and the divine essence which constitute the vital life force. Because these facts may be new to a great many of people, or people here in the West, it seems appropriate at this moment to augment these statements with the use of schematic diagrams, symbols, or just make it plain and explain the fundamental laws which are involved in the principles in dealing with the oversoul. That there is one soul in the universe, and this soul is the consciousness and vital essence of God, should not be surprising to any devoted student of sacred literature, nor will be surprising to those who have made a careful study of the fundamental laws of biology and ontology. If what religious people claim that God is the creator of all things, and from His consciousness, and we know for a fact, we're saying His loosely, because we know in divine essence, and going back into the 7 Hermetic principles and dealing with the doctrine of gender, when you deal on the etheric realm, and as mentioned here, another term would be the vital life force, the very essence, or the etheric counterpart that things are comprised of and created from. Meaning, as we've discussed, we know there was different stages of existing or existence when we trace back what are we the essence of, and we know when we get back to the vital life force of what we emerged from, that energy state, and then from that energy state into a liquid state, and that liquid state obviously into a solid state. So this is saying here that if God is the creator of all things, and from His consciousness and divine essence emanates all consciousness and all vitality, then all consciousness throughout the universe and all vital energy of living, creative nature must have one central divine source, and must be continuous and uniform throughout the universe. Now, this would be your concept of the all. A lot of people in the metaphysical community, in the Kemetic community, the so-called conscious community in general, will use that term from a quantum or a metaphysical perspective and say the all. But we have to get a broader understanding, or we have to create a better visual to understand how all that ties in. So this is saying this is all connected. It's a constant chain of events that's constantly, it's continuous. It never stops. It's evolving. It's constantly moving. Now, when we got into the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti, we talked about the doctrine of vibration, and the doctrine of vibration coincides and confirms this concept here. Okay. Then it goes on to say, even a moment's reflection will reveal that it is far more difficult to think of the Creator, of having created out of His consciousness and essence millions upon millions of individual souls, each retaining its distinct individuality and separateness, than it is to think of one universal essence and one universal soul. To conceive of any means of maintaining individual entities of the same soul essence and same divine consciousness without a tendency on their part to unite and blend into one essence and one consciousness is a difficult thing indeed. God, or the creator of all things, is the father of all images created by him or in his likeness, for lack of a better word. We cannot conceive of the human children of one earthly father as being of a vital essence or blood energy, so separated that the same essence is not in each of them. With the soul essence, however, we are dealing with the subtle and transcendental energy. All right, let me say that again. With the soul essence, however, we are dealing with a subtle and transcendental energy that pervades all space and which cannot be isolated or confined in any enclosure. All right, so this whole concept of God being in heaven would go against this very principle of the universal soul, the all things being connected, because you can't enclose this concept or confine it. So religion makes a big mistake when they try to institute a mythological concept that factually cannot be proven, that they've taken this concept, this energy, or this metaphysical explanation for what the all is and how it permeates throughout the universe. They've turned that and turned it into a physical being, some old man that sits in the sky and is enclosed in this place called heaven, which again would kind of wipe out what we know as all in all, because in doing that process, as we know, if this is confirmation that if God, who they say is the creator, is enclosed in this place called heaven, they're confessing that if he's in heaven, then he's not here. When you physicalize or trivialize that concept, because when you look at the oversoul connected to the universal soul, which is the vital life force of the continuous process of this existing that goes on continuously throughout the universes, it would alleviate the concept of the essence, because remember that likeness and essence and the creator's energy is stamped in everything. So if I look at an individual, I see God. If I look at nature and creation, the sun, the trees, the water, I see the essence, I see the creator, verifying the concept of omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. So that would tie into God is everywhere and everything at all times. But that scientific principle, which you can't alleviate, is destroyed when you take it and package it in a system of faith and belief. And now you're saying that there is a God that sits in a place called heaven that is passing judgment on earth. Now, not to deviate and get off from the subject, but we, as we've said before, we know the God of the Bible, which ties into the brotherhood of gold, was Enlil. We know when the Anunnaki came to this planet, the main purpose of them coming to this planet was to, mine the gold mines, get as much gold that they can scavenge from the planet, because they knew of the healing principles and properties of the monatomic gold. They knew it was a conductor, which when the body was filled with the gold dust, when it was put into that dust of powder form and made the body, or was able to make one a whole light being, or making them less dense, where they were able to levitate, they were able to heal, they were able to astrally travel. They basically went or became immortal. And their big thing was to get that gold and control the properties, principles, and knowledge of that gold. Now, in that process of doing that, they use their own DNA to make clones or workers. And this is your story in the Sumerian text when you go into the Atra Hasis, the Gilgamesh epics. All the stories that were recorded in Sumer, which are very similar to your Bible and your biblical stories, you'll see that when you read your modern day Bible, that this is a whole reflection. It started with that process. And that's why when you're reading your Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelations, it's constant war, bloodsheds, battles, fighting, disagreements, power, and control. And you had in Leo and the Brotherhood of Gold, him and his seed, after they had no use for the humans that they created, they didn't want them to have this knowledge. And they made sure they went to every limit to start wars, death, and destructions, and institute systems of faith and belief to keep people ignorant to the real truth. So the God of that Bible is not the God that you're thinking. But we'll do a whole build on that. But I wanted to throw that in dealing with the God concept and the faith and belief concept, and just how far that takes you from understanding what all is, or what the oversoul is, and how it connects to nature and creation. Because now we're leaving the realm of person, place, and thing. We're going outside of that, and we're going from a three-dimensional understanding of this to a four-dimensional understanding. Okay, so let's go and we cannot conceive of this essence, we're going to continue, as being in human form. And that's why I wanted to go through that before I got to this part, because you can't conceive this, you can't minimize this concept of who and what God or the Creator is, and put this in physical form. It's impossible. Okay, without at the same time extending beyond that form and contacting the same essence resident in all other human forms. When the sacred writings of the Orientals and even of the Christians speak of the soul in human beings, they do not necessarily imply an individualized and separated soul, but the soul essence and soul consciousness of God that is resident in human beings. Each of us has a soul, but not a soul in the sense that it is a thing apart from every other soul in human beings. So there's no separation there. The oversoul is the concept that connects everything to that universal soul. Even though there might be separate manifestations of that, it's all connected. You can't separate it. It all comes from the same source. And as we've been going over, you have varying degrees of vibration, and they manifest on the physical realm in different degrees. That's all it is. There's no separating those factors. You can't classify it, and then when you try to put it in its physical form, it defeats the purpose. It doesn't make any sense. To illustrate the principle or law involved, I have resorted to the homely illustration of electricity that is utilized in the lighting of modern electric lamps. Electric wires in the upper part, it's a diagram here, and it shows how currency flows. I'm just going to kind of read the explanation of that concept. The electricity that flows into each one of an electric lamp causes the lamp bulb to be alive with light. We know this when we use a lamp. It is not broken in its continuity or in its flow through all of the lamps. The electricity that illuminates these bulbs and gives them life or light flows through each lamp and out again to enter into the next lamp, and so on. The electric current, therefore, in each lamp may be likened to the soul essence of the lamp. And while we would say that each lamp has its own electricity with its utilizing, we cannot look upon that electricity in each lamp as being separated from or distinct from the electricity that is in all the other lamps. So I was saying, if you take a row of all these lamps and you run a current or a wire through them, even though that you have individual lamps, there could be 6, 7, 8, or 9, it's the same current running through each one of those lamps. That's the same thing that we have to understand as beings of creation, or the soul. It's even though we all manifest and we have our own soul that connects us into the oversoul, it's all coming from the same source because it's running on that same current. Now, if we understood that, the power of coming to the realization of that and really mastering that concept would alleviate us and get us over the hump of a lot of things that are confusing us about our existence, about how we got here, why are we here, what's our purpose in life, how does this thing that we call life really actually work. Okay, let's continue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip around. Let's go to therefore we will use this term, the oversoul, to mean the universal soul. Okay, so when we say we as individuals have a soul that connect to the oversoul, let's establish that what we mean by when we say oversoul, the universal soul, for lack of a better word. Or in other words, the divine consciousness and essence of God. Okay? So get out of your head the illusion. We're not talking about, when we say God, we're saying the divine consciousness, because it's energy. Everything manifested itself out of energy, vibrations, and frequencies. So we have to get locked outside of our head. We're not talking about a physical being. We're not talking about some deity in human form, because anything that incarnates in human form, whether it's termed a deity in the flesh, is still a lesser manifestation of the original. Okay, so this all still comes from that great oversoul. It manifested out of it. It became one small fragment of it. And again, even if you deify it, and that's basically what a lot of these monotheistic religions did, they took the concept of God and deified it in physical form. And as it said earlier, as we read, you can't do that, because you can't take that metaphysical concept, that's the concept, and make it physical, because then you limit exactly what it is, or it doesn't make sense anymore, because now you've turned it into a belief or a faith with no scientific principles to support or back it up. It becomes what they call a theory, right? And a theory is a confession and confirmation of the term that these so-called deceivers will use in their Bible, in their Greek translations in the New Testament. When you see the word God, you have the word theos, and theos has root in the word theory. So they're giving you their theory or their concept of who and what God is, which is also at the same token confirming they have no clue to who and what God is. And sometimes the only way for them to explain that is they have to put it in physical form, because they don't have the explanation of understanding the very essence of it. Okay? So then it goes on to say the divine consciousness and essence of God, which pervades all space and segments of which are manifested in each human body. This means that in the body of each human being, there is the soul essence, the power, the energy, the consciousness of God, that God is within us rather than without. Okay, let me say that again. That God, or the Creator, is within us rather than without. And like I've said a million times before, most monotheistic belief systems and religions in general teach for you to look for the essence of the Creator outside yourself, going into this false fictitious concept that there is a spook or spirit God, but yet they draw imagery up of this God in physical form. So a God that holds no substance, that has no scientific value, and can be factually conceptuated or proved, they want you to give your devotion, allegiance, and energy to this deity, okay? And you're supposed to believe that it's real. And you're supposed to believe unequivocally without questioning, because it was instituted, told to you, and you were told to accept it and believe it. So this is not what this is saying. It's saying you have to look within. Okay? So the divine essence of the Creator resides within you, not without you. Okay? Then it goes on to say, this brings us to a clear understanding of many of the sacred writings of the past, and especially of those which are found in what we call Christian doctrines. In thinking of the oversoul extending a part of itself downward and into the body of each human being, we must give some thought to the relationship of the soul to the ego. This is important. And the personality of each human being, as touched upon in other chapters, meaning this book, which is called Soul Impressions. In order to impress these relationships upon the mind, you have to resort to another concept or illustration. So there's another terminology here. We're going to skip that, and we're going to move down further. In other words, if we look upon the oversoul in the universe as being divided into unbroken segments, and each segment representing a part of the oversoul that resides in a human body, we will find out that each one of these segments of the oversoul possesses an ego or a personality composed of mind or intelligence and consciousness with memory. The soul itself is composed of the divine essence or vital life force, creative energy which emanates from God, okay, the source of all life. However, in addition to this creative and vitalizing energy of the soul, each segment possesses an attribute, an ego, or a personality with its mind, memory, and consciousness. As we have stated, the ego or personality with its divine mind and divine consciousness has often been referred to as the psychic body, okay, of a human being resident within the physical body, the psychic body, where we're able to tap into our higher senses, psychic powers, psychic spiritual forces that we're able to tap into this divine consciousness that emanates all throughout creation and the universe. So we're able to become in tune and connect with that consciousness, which creates an awareness which raises us to the realization of self and God. That's what this is talking about. So when we have a lot of people in the conscious community that walk around and say, I'm God, but I don't really think they can take it to the essence and break that down and explain what does that mean. It doesn't mean I'm God in the sense you'll have some of our brothers that will profess it based on a racial level. I'm God, I'm the original black God, I'm God this, I'm God that. But yet, being God, there comes an awareness and a responsibility with that, because being God and being raised to the awareness of what God is, now you have a responsibility to teach others. That's your responsibility, okay? It's not a go on a mission to save the world. That doesn't work. That's religious dogma. You can't force anything or anybody to do anything, because that individual's ego and personality, and what shapes that individual's personality, that individual is only going to make that change when they raise themselves up to their awareness. And awareness starts with you making them aware with your knowledge and your wisdom. So it's your job to make people aware, and then they can't say they never knew. And what they do with that information is entirely up to them. So we as gods, our mission as gods and deities is to go all over this universe, all over this planet Earth that we live on, and educate the masses. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're called to do. It's about educating, teaching the knowledge and wisdom, so that that individual can take that knowledge and wisdom and apply it and raise themselves up to deity. That's what this is really all about, by putting it into practice. And like I've said a million times before, and you'll hear me say it over and over again, if you don't put any of these principles into practice, then it's useless. It's completely useless. All right, let's talk a little bit now about the aura and how it connects to the oversoul. We're gonna finish with this part here. Let's get a little bit into that. Okay. The aura is like radiations of light that come from an electric bulb. We're going to use this metaphor again. When the wires within are connected within the source of electricity, the aura of the human body is the result of the soul essence and vitality resident within the physical body. Okay? So, the human aura is referred to in this form in the ancient manuscripts, or many ancient writings of the masters, referred to, for an example, as an egg, and therefore symbolic of the reproductive energy of the animal kingdom. When the soul, with its essence and consciousness, is withdrawn from the physical body, the aura follows the soul and no longer manifests around the physical body. As stated elsewhere, there's been thousands upon thousands of observations that have been made at the time of transition, or when one physically dies, at the time of transition, when the aura of the physical body has been seen to rise above the body and to remain in space as the soul withdrew and left the body lifeless, meaning the naked eye can perceive at the time of transition the aura departing from the physical, because it is the divine essence, as stated. It is the soul essence and vitality that's resident within the physical body. So that's critical to understand. Now, in dealing with what we call the aura, it's also a signal or a warner to attract whole light beings, beings of light and energy, depending on what type of energy your aura is emitting. This is important to understand, because it can attract positive and negative beings. When dealing with the crown chakra, okay, when the crown chakra is open, and it's open when you reach certain emotional states, or when you reach certain levels of vibrational energy, that chakra opens, and you can open yourself up receptively to good and bad bands of energy. Now, when one individual is vibrating on such a low frequency, and they're vibrating on the material realm, where they just might be a very materialistic person on all levels, they're controlled by money, greed, desire, lust, anger, hatred, all those attributes which make one dense and harder for them to connect to the cosmic consciousness because the chakras are blocked. They can open themselves up to walk-ins and beings that can take over their body and control the thought process. And they see that. These beings read your aura. So that's why it's very important for you to do the spiritual work on yourself, to get your vibration balanced through meditation, through proper diet, study, and taking proper information, and then leading that productive life by the living example of doing all those things which balance oneself out and attune them into this energy. So the aura will dictate on how you are vibrating spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and of course physically. So this is a gauge, and this is what these beings see, and how they're able to attract to you, good and bad, because depending on the energy giving out by the aura is determined by what type of beings you're going to attract. So you're either going to attract, if it's negativity, you have to look at what you're doing. How are you, what decisions are you making? And when you're making those decisions or exercising your free will, what karmic energy are you sending out to the universe? Because remember, now, by our decisions and the energy we send out, now you have to deal with the spiritual and the universal laws that all things in the universe have to be balanced out. So every choice and decision you make is going to be an effect on that. Okay? And it affects this whole process that we're talking about today. All right, let's finish up. It is very important that we keep in mind that the soul in the body also has other attributes besides its divine essence and vitality. These attributes constitute the ego or personality with mind and memory. This ego or personality always remains with each segment of the oversoul, for the ego is immortal, like the soul itself, and cannot be destroyed, and never ceases to exit. Whether the segment of the soul is in the physical body or out of it, the ego, with its mind, memory, and consciousness, remains with it. And so we see that we can have an intelligent, conscious segment of the soul either in the body or out of the body. When it is in a body, we have the union of spiritual with the material, making a perfect manifestation of a living soul on earth. I'll say that again. When this is in the body, we have the union of the spiritual with the material, making a perfect manifestation of a living soul on earth. When it is out of the body, we have a physical body that is lifeless, meaning this now in a transition stage, unintelligent and unconscious, and a segment of soul still retaining its vitality and conscious ego and intellect. With these points well fixed in your mind, this helps to give you a better understanding of this. Okay? Then it goes on to finish, and then we'll dialogue. We should also be impressed with the fact that the ego. Now, when we're saying ego, I want to make clarification. We're not talking about the physical sense of ego that we know as somebody that is egotistical or is self-rooted in ego. We use that term on the physical realm to show you how that person becomes selfish and it becomes about them, and we say they're egotistical. The ego that it's talking about here is talking about the personality that shapes this individual. When you're hearing ego, so it's not in that sense as we would know it on simple layman terms. This is giving you the definition or concept of ego from the metaphysical. All right. So then it goes on to say, if not a mortal thing, but an immortal thing, and a part of the oversoul existing eternally, meaning the ego. We should also be impressed with the fact that the ego or personality within each of us manifests during our lifetime and continues to exist and retain its identity even after transition or death. It continues to maintain that identity. So this is how these energy beings are able to incarnate in multiple human manifestations or human forms, because when they leave one body and they can go to another body, they still maintain their identity or ego. Okay. Therefore, there are egos or personalities, existing in physical bodies on earth and existing outside of physical bodies in the cosmic. And all these egos or personalities incarnated in bodies or existing outside of bodies in the cosmic are in contact and constant communication with each other through having the same soul essence continuously passing through them. Let me say that again. All of these egos or personalities incarnated in bodies or existing outside of bodies in the cosmic are in contact and constant communication with each other through having the same soul essence continuously passing through them, the oversoul. So they're all in contact and in unison because they're connected to this universal soul called the oversoul. Now, if we as physical beings all got ourselves on the right vibrational and frequency level, we would be able to connect with each other and tap into that vital life force, and we would be at such a high level of spiritual consciousness that the energy we could create would be, just couldn't even put it into words. It would eliminate the #1 disease in the world on the planet called ignorance. Because like I've said before, ignorance is the #1 killer on this planet. It's a sickness that breeds mental blindness. So we could alleviate that based on this, understanding this concept, raising ourselves up to the awareness of it and putting it into practice. All right. And the last part to finish. Incidentally, it may be mentioned that this ancient understanding of the association of all egos with each other and the uniting of all souls into one soul was the foundation for the belief in the universal brotherhood of humanity through the universal parenthood of all beings, and establishes the fact that all human beings are brothers and sisters under one creator and of the same essence, same vitality, and same consciousness, regardless of race, creed, color, or other distinctive elements of the ego. And regardless of race, creed, or color. Now, it doesn't mean that there wasn't different varying degrees of vibration when dealing with race. And that's why in a previous post, the one entitled "What was the purpose of the original God or supreme black God creating the white man or the devil?" to help you to see and understand, when you look at the manifestations and the genetic modification of races on the planet, from the original black seed on down to the Caucasian seed, and in between that graftation or seeding, you have multiple different mixtures and seeds that manifested from the original black seed. It's still, regardless, even though you had what you would term the original black seed, which was first, on down to the very young and genetically modified white seed, they all still come and are all still connected into this concept of what we're calling the oversoul. They're just different varying degrees of vibration. Okay, and that's the reason why I was saying it doesn't mean you can't acknowledge your great ancestry, because, like I said, a lot of people in the conscious community like to get stuck back in time, and they want to identify with Egypt or parts of a doctrine or culture that they like, and what that tends to do is put them in a box. So what we're saying here, it doesn't mean don't know your history, it doesn't mean disregard that history, but don't let these beings telepathically feed off of your emotions, and they can send certain impulses and messages if your aura is vibrating at a low frequency, and they can assimilate these messages into you subconsciously to control how you think. Therefore you become reactive instead of proactive. That's my whole point. So the battle that we face, and that's why I had said before, with all the stuff they got going on in the news right now, it's to keep you distracted of what they're really trying to do to you. So there's many different spiritual warfares that they're implementing on us on a daily basis, whether we're consciously or subconsciously aware of it. And they have to create a distraction while they're doing that work. So right now, they have to create something that causes you to get emotional and causes you to react. And that's what we have to make sure we don't become a victim to in this day and time, because right now we're in that high spiritual battle. We're in those days and times where we're up against principalities of darkness in high places that we can't see, and they construct plans on how they are able to control us and dictate our every move. Now, the only way you combat that and become aware by building up your psychic self-defense is by doing things to open up your chakras. And like we talked about, that root chakra, which is by your spleen area, that has to be activated first, because nothing can be done if the root chakra isn't activating or is not open, because then you can't work on any of the others. So the chakra, which are energy conductors, and when we have them vibrating at the correct frequency, or we have them connecting with this oversoul or this universal soul, our potential is limitless. Now again, easier said than done. I get it, and I'm not saying it's easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of study. It's a lot of ritual, a lot of practice that has to go into it. But if you say you're a master and you're God, that's the responsibility that comes with it. Putting in the work. Nobody wants to put in the work. Most people just want to read books and think by reading something that automatically makes them conscious and God. And that couldn't be but the furthest thing from the truth. It couldn't be but the furthest thing from the truth. So we got to get out of that lazy man mentality. We got to get out of that mentality of finding external things that we want to shift the blame to why we're not successful. And that's why I had said you have a lot of that going on in the so-called conscious Kemetic community, where they just want to blame the white man or the devil for all of their problems. And the reason why they're not successful is because of the white man or the devil. And the reason why they're in the position they're in is because of the white man or the devil. The reason why they're broke and ain't got no money is because of the white man and the devil. It's a crutch that's constantly being used on and leaned on to justify not being successful. Okay? And again, I want to stress, we're not denying, previous history, but we're living in a different day and time, a different spiritual awareness. When 2012 came and that earth shifted on its axis, the pole shifts occurred, and it created this great spiritual shift in consciousness. That's the damn time we're living in, man. No more excuses, No more finding reasons why we can't become deities. If we are the first and we are the original, then there's no force outside of that should be able to have control over us except ourselves. We're the only ones either hindering our growth or assisting our spiritual growth. Okay? Having said that, I'm going to stop there. And again, as usual, I'd like to make a couple of quick announcements. As the recording of this video today, February 11th, 2015, we want to thank everybody that came out this Sunday at Sophia's Garden of Matt. We had a great turnout. That class is actually posted on the Mother Nubia channel here that you can watch. It was a good class, good turnout. We will be going back to Sophia's Garden of Maat on March 8th. We will upload that class. We have also, before that, I'll get you the information and location for those watching this video. We will be doing another event on the 21st of February in the Miami area, and we have next month something coming up in the Orlando area. And again, that information forthcoming. So we'll get you that information on our next post. I want to give my brother Dry Bones Connection a shout out. He's on Blog Talk Radio. If you want to catch him, just go to Blog Talk Radio and just type in OE Dry Bones. It'll come right up, and he is on the air every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and Wednesday nights from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. So check the brother out. Has a really good show. Some really good guests that he has on this. Check the brother out. You could also hit him up on the email at drybones7@hotmail.com. Don't forget to check us out on TalkShoe Radio. We do a show every 2 weeks on TalkShoe Radio. It's called Awakening Universal Minds. You can just go to talkshoe.com and type in the search box AUM. It'll come right up. It's the first thing that comes up. AUM. If you type in AUM, Awakening Universal Minds, you can go right to the top of the page and hit the follow. You can type in your information, and you will automatically be put on the list and notified when the shows are uploaded and listed to broadcast and air. You could also hit me up on the email khnum19@gmail.com. I could add you to that list if you so choose. Okay, so having said that, I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back soon with another post. And wherever the spirit or the ancestors lead me to talk about, I don't pick anything or plan it. I kind of just, right before I do it, whatever the spirit tells me to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about. So we'll let spirit dictate what we're going to talk about next. Hotep, we'll see you again next time.